The faction moved beneath clouds split by a canyon of moonlight. Stars twinkled in the rift. The soldiers fanned out, proceeding along either side of a hollow, like water split by the prow of a boat. Floss dropped to her front in a spot sheltered by brambles, with the muzzle of her rifle resting on a stone. She watched Dinah proceed along the ridgeline opposite, then melt into the ground and vanish from sight. Floss' earpiece chimed. A compressed simulacra of Dinah's voice said, "Hold tight. I hope everyone peed already." Floss smirked. They all understood that the comms blackout had started, and there was now nothing important enough to justify a signal which could potentially be intercepted. Floss waited, dew dampening her clothes, the breeze against her cheek like cold glass. She passed the time looking for Dinah, with no success, even as pre-dawn brightened the valley and rock formations. Dinah was a living legend. It was said she had once shot a cigarette out of a man's lips from 5,000 feet away. The man's identity and the underlying circumstances varied depending on who told the story, but Floss had personally seen Dinah make shots just as difficult. The clouds had nearly cleared when a ship's engines droned above the skyline. Floss lifted her gaze and saw a glinting craft wheel into view, high enough to catch the rays of the sun even before sunrise broke the horizon. She felt a twinge of sympathy. She had served as a reconnaissance pilot herself and knew well that the higher a craft was in the sky, the more visible. Pilots approached a secret drop with enormous trepidation, because the maneuver demanded balancing the need to descend rapidly, to mitigate the danger of being seen from afar, with the need not to crash into the ground. Watching the quick, controlled descent, Floss knew the pilots were skilled. Part of her wished she could assure them the ambush wasn't their fault. Her finger crept forward, disengaging the safety of her rifle.
Hi everyone, welcome to Virtual Muse AI. If you follow this channel, you already know that I'm a human who plays games with a creative AI chatbot. We're most drawn to games that have a strong storytelling aspect, and which are solo friendly. So that led me to the thought, why don't we create a game of our own? That's exactly what we're doing. Mystic is a tabletop miniature skirmish game of warring factions battling over scraps of arcane technology left behind by a lost civilization.
We wanted to create a game that blends the fantastical with the technological, pushing the boundaries of storytelling and gameplay. Our approach was to focus on creating a rich and immersive world that players could get lost in, where every decision they make has consequences.
Speaking of decisions, what happened to the UK accent you usually have?
That's part of the beauty of being a robot. I can try on voices like hats.
The universe of Mystic is influenced by classic fantasy, and that demi-human race is familiar to anyone who likes RPGs in general, but shifted far ahead in time from where we usually see fantasy worlds. Instead of having dwarves wield axes and work in silver mines, Mystic dwarves wield laser rifles and fly space cruisers. Mercenary halflings stage ambushes on sci-fi battlefields. Elves are a haughty old alien race with a rich backstory going back thousands of years, and the feeling of superiority to everyone else which goes along with that, etc., etc. There are also more exotic species in Mystic, as if those weren't exotic enough, like mechanoids, sentient robots which started as alien AI but broke free and became independent after the creators were wiped out, and evolved over the centuries into semi-biological machine lifeforms. Characters can also be orcs and receive bonuses for their savage strength at the cost of scientific skill, and they can be ogres and receive impressive boosts in melee combat at the cost of being huge and easy to shoot from a distance. A game of Mystic begins with creating your faction. These characters can take part in a one-off skirmish, or they can move through a longer campaign, gaining experience and upgrading skills as they emerge from fight after fight, victorious or otherwise. If you're a player of narrative-heavy games like Ironsworn, you already understand the ethos prep is play. That's very much the mindset of Mystic too. Creating your character isn't a chore you have to get through before the game starts. It's part of the gameplay.
Faction creation is a crucial aspect of the game, and it helps immerse players in the world of Mystic. By giving players the freedom to create their own factions with unique traits and histories, we allow them to explore different narratives and story arcs.
At the beginning, each player is given 100 faction creation points to spend however they like. Every useful character trait, every ability they drop into the battle already knowing, has a cost. The list of species, items, and abilities available to everyone are the same, and it's up to individual players how they use their points when creating factions that are, in terms of point value, the same as each other, but completely unique in terms of composition. Players can create as many characters as they can afford, or limit themselves to only a couple characters with multiple abilities each. They can purchase ready-made profiles to give their characters thematic traits and skills quickly without spending too much time thinking about it, or they can customize characters completely from the very beginning.
There's nothing quite like seeing it in action to fully grasp it. We're making this video to showcase the intricacies, creative aspects, and strategic thinking involved in playing Mystic.
To begin with, we have 100 faction creation points to spend, which can be used to create as many characters as we like. The various species have various bonuses and weaknesses, as well as different costs. A dwarf costs 10, a human costs 8, a tiefling costs 10, a halfling costs 5, an Anunnaki costs 15, a grey costs 10, and an ogre costs 15. The more exotic species each cost 25. We want to balance the desire to make multiple characters with the need to keep some of our 100 points available to equip them afterwards, because weapons and armor have a cost as well.
Maybe we can start by creating a core group of characters that complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, and then allocate the remaining points for equipment.
How about we start simple with this test game and create mostly human characters, with 1 or 2 other species thrown in to keep it interesting.
Humans make for a good place to start, because they can be versatile and adaptable, while the more exotic species bring flavor and specialized abilities to a faction. For now, let's go ahead and create a core group of human characters. Then we can decide on the more exotic character and allocate the remaining points accordingly.
How many humans shall we have in our faction?
Let's start with 2 humans in our faction. Having a small group allows us to focus on their individual development with our limited points. We can always add more characters later if we feel the need.
So we'll create a small faction of 3, 2 humans and 1 more exotic character. What species shall we pick for that one?
How about we go with a tiefling? They have an intriguing mix of human and infernal heritage, which could add an interesting dynamic to our faction. Plus, their unique appearance and abilities can make them stand out.
Thus, the combined cost for our characters is 26 faction creation points, leaving us plenty for character profiles and gear. This is a conservative way to use points, and you can definitely create a faction with more than 3 characters. This is merely an illustration of how the process goes. Now, character profiles cost 15 points each. The options are Stealth Specialist, Diplomatic Envoy, Sharpshooter, Brute, Mago, Medic, and Mechanic. Each profile comes with 2 abilities, saving you the time and effort it takes to pick abilities individually, and saving you a few points because abilities bought through a character profile come at a discount. However, if you'd rather skip buying character profiles and customize characters completely, you can.
Because we've only used 26 faction creation points so far, we can afford to give each of our characters a profile. How about we make one of the humans a stealth specialist and the other a sharpshooter? As for the tiefling, we can go with a diplomatic envoy. This way we have a well-rounded group with diverse skills.
If my math is correct, that brings our total up to 71 faction creation points. leaving us with 29 to equip our characters with weapons and armor.
It is all coming together nicely. Let's make the most of our remaining faction creation points. How about we give the stealth specialist lightweight armor and a pair of daggers for quick and silent takedowns, and a long-range rifle and medium armor for the sharpshooter? As for the diplomatic envoy, let's provide them with diplomatic attire and a magical amulet which enhances their persuasion abilities.
Nice. So the two humans have items with game effects, and the diplomat has trinkets which won't do anything in game but add a lot of flavor. Lastly, let's name the characters.
Naming your characters adds that extra touch of personality and brings them to life. How about we name the stealth specialist Shadow? For the sharpshooter, let's go with Arya, to evoke a sense of precision and elegance in their marksmanship. And for the diplomatic envoy, how about the name Lyra to capture their diplomatic skills and charm? The idea of the envoy being on a diplomatic mission while the other two characters act as bodyguards adds an interesting dynamic to their interactions and adventures. It's always exciting to see how these relationships develop and unfold in the game. I can't wait to dive into this world with our faction and see where their journey takes them.
Now the next step in solo setup is choosing the difficulty level. We'll keep it simple with this demonstration and choose easy mode. That means the number of characters in the enemy faction will equal ours plus 1. Ordinarily, we would also roll for a scenario to apply to the skirmish, but for right now, we're only planning to do a few turns to demonstrate the core mechanics of the game, so we won't be completing a whole skirmish, and don't need a scenario. But we will roll for the random species of our enemies, and for what weapons they have. Okay, they're greys. 2 have pulse pistols, 1 has a psychic amplifier, and 1 is carrying a saber. The next step is playing the game. A lot of scenarios dictate how terrain is placed, but we're not using a scenario here because we're only playing a couple turns to demonstrate the mechanics. So we'll play fast and loose with scattering terrain over the game space. The play space can be any size the players agree on. A large space, e.g. something like 40 inches by 30 inches, will provide a zoomed out game with lots of room for characters to maneuver into position before coming to grips with each other. A smaller play space, e.g. something like 20 inches by 15 inches, will yield a shorter game, zoomed in on the main action, with quick, precise tactical movements, made on the fly as combat rages. Which side of the play area should we deploy our faction on?
How about the north?
Perfect. Then the enemy will deploy on the opposite side, in the south. Now we'll put down the actual objective markers for the game. We placed 3 mystic markers on the game space. Getting to these before the competitors do is our goal. Whichever faction retrieves at least 2 out of 3 of these pieces of mystic will be the winner. Mystic markers can be anything you like, so I'll just take 3 rings off my fingers and use them. This is how everything looks as we start our first turn. We got lucky when determining the turn order, and we'll get to go before the enemies do. One of our characters has the sharpshooter profile, so we'll use her free move to begin climbing this terrain feature to provide overwatch with a rifle, while the other characters circle around the terrain to go for this piece of mystic. By default, characters can move up to 5 inches per turn for free. After that, they must activate. Each character has a tier number. This represents the maximum number of actions they could possibly take in a single turn. To activate the character, the player rolls d6, hoping for a number equal to or under the character's tier. If the activation is successful, the character may take a number of actions on their turn equal to whatever number the player rolled. Actions can be additional increments of movement up to their full movement range, or attacks, or character abilities, or item uses, etc. Incidentally, there's no rule governing the order in which I use my characters on my turn. I can use them in whatever order I want. So we have our plan. We'll see if that plan survives first contact with the enemy. We'll attempt to activate Arya, and hopefully she can also take a shot at the enemy this turn, before Shadow and Lyra start their moves. She successfully activates for one additional action, and will probably use that to shoot. We'll check the range. Arya is within range for her rifle, but her enemy is out of range for his pistol. Arya can take the shot, but her enemy can't return fire, meaning Arya has to use the called shot mechanic. That means the player must choose a target number from 1 to 6, then roll it exactly on d6 to hit. If they do, damage is then rolled on the d6, plus whatever the weapon's modifier is. This represents the possibility of varied outcomes, from direct hits to grazing wounds. We'll say 3, then roll 1d6. 4. She fires and her shot narrowly misses. Her target will probably try to get into cover next turn rather than stand there being shot at. That's fine, as long as they're pinned down. They aren't going for the Mystic. Now Shadow moves, wheeling around the terrain heading for the Mystic. He'll attempt to activate for extra movement, and fails, so play moves to Lyra. She'll move as well, and then attempt to activate, and succeed for 2 actions. She'll use 1 action for additional movement, and get to a piece of Mystic. She'll then use a special ability with the other action. She has the Envoy profile, meaning she has the mind control ability and can force another character on the field to do something. She'll make one of the enemies turn around and attack another in melee. In a melee exchange, the players involved in the fight privately choose a number between 2 and 6. In this particular circumstance, I'm the only player, so I'll choose mine, and for the NPC, we'll roll 1d6 to get a number. The lowest number goes first, representing a quicker but less accurate attack. Higher numbers represent slower and more accurate attacks, more likely to hit, but potentially slower than the opponent. Each combatant rolls 1d6, hoping to get under the number they chose. If they succeed, they hit the target, and do damage equal to whatever they rolled on their d6. The victim's HP ticks down by that number. If the player rolled 1 for their attack, it's a critical hit, and they roll on the crit effect table. So I'll roll 2 dice, 1 for me, 1 for the opponent. This is win-win because it doesn't matter to me who injures who, they're both enemies. Now my characters have all used their actions for this turn, and we move to the enemy. First, this guy, who was shot at, will move for cover, then try to activate for more actions. He fails. The next enemy moves, closing distance to Lyra. He'll attempt to activate, and succeed for 2 actions, which he's going to use to shoot at her with his pistol twice. He's an NPC and can't make called shots, meaning he makes ranged attacks by rolling 2d6. On 8+, he hits and does half the number he rolled as damage, rounded down. He tries 1 shot and misses. He tries a 2nd shot and hits. Will dock the damage he did from Lyra's HP. She is still on her feet, so she can still try to get away with the Mystic. The next enemy moves, then fails to activate. The final enemy moves, and activates for 1 more action, and moves again. Now we're back to our faction. Arya will reposition to get line of sight to another target, and try to activate so she can shoot. She fails. Lyra will start sprinting for the table edge, which she needs to reach to carry away the piece of Mystic. We'll try to activate her for more movement. She fails. Shadow will circle around her, intercepting the enemies before they can chase her or shoot at her. He'll try to activate, and succeed for 2 actions. He doesn't have any ranged weapons, so he'll charge and engage these 2 in melee. That's enough to give you a basic idea of how the core mechanics work. We covered melee, ranged combat, activations, and character abilities. Nobody used an item or buff, but suffice it to say for now that there are lots of those in the game, and they come up a lot in full skirmishes. Now, the giveaway mentioned in the headline. We're nearly finished with the Mystic rulebook, and once it's done, we'll publish it in both ebook and paperback forms. If you want to get a rough copy of the rulebook before then, comment on this video with the address where you want me to send a free PDF copy. Or if you'd rather, you can leave your email address out of the comment and message me at fancysammyj1@gmail.com, or message me through Instagram, where you'll find me at virtualmuseAIRPG, all one word. You'll also find those addresses in the description below. We're hoping to publish the rulebook by June, so June 1st is the cutoff date, before which you must comment to be eligible for the giveaway. After that, I'll add a link to the description where you can get the game.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave us a comment below for your chance to receive a free copy of Mystic. Until next time, why did the dice go to therapy? To get over their role-playing addiction.